So let me just see where we're at. Setting up for YouTube. Hang tight. Here we go. We are here. All right. And we are live. Very good. See. Okay, cool. We are setting live. Up for YouTube. Hang tight.
I think there's a little bit of like noise.
YouTube, which is awesome. So excited. There is a little bit of feedback.
Yeah.
Can you still hear it?
No, it's good. Now it's good.
Now it's good. Okay. All right, awesome. So we are live on YouTube. Welcome, welcome. This is Warriors of the Heart Kingdom Talks. You're here with Christine Jewell and Vivian Villacis. Am I saying it right?
Yeah, you're like the first person that actually said it right. Yay.
That requires a tongue roll. You guys are here with two amazing queens, women of God. If this is your first time here, please take a minute, subscribe below. There's a subscribe button. We are here to talk to women and men of God who want to co-create epic kingdoms together as husband and wife, as partners, really coming together in our original design, the way God created us to be, because this is a space of prosperity, where prosperity flows and peace flows. And these are the standards. This is the norm for us. And society, the world has told us otherwise. So if you guys are here and this is resonating, take a second, subscribe now. This is going to be a whole series, Under Attack. And today I just really want to dive into this topic. In the first video in this series, I talked about that we are in a time, an era where the family unit, the original design of creation itself, is under attack. The masculine, the feminine, the family unit, our very creation, the womb, life in the womb is under attack. And there's a massive agenda to distort creation, to pit us against each other, to have men compete with women or women compete with men, and men emasculated, demasculated. And we're diluting and watering down the power, the creative power that God has, his original design for our relationships to thrive and for the family unit to flourish. So today, I really want to dive into the feminine, the beautiful design of the feminine, what it means to be a queen. What are the lies that society is telling us that we have bought into, that have literally we've become hostage to them. We've become enslaved, in bondage. We're going to unpack what it means to be a queen, what it means to come back to our original design as daughters of the King of Kings, right? We are the crown of creation, and we're going to dive into that. And then we're going to talk about how do we rise as sisters, as women of God, as queens with our husbands, next to our husbands, and what our leadership role is. And so I think I'm super excited to be here with Vivian. Real quick, I want to just say, you guys, this woman, ladies and gentlemen, this woman is such a beautiful, graceful soul. I am so honored and grateful that you are here. You have been so instrumental in my own life. And it's so funny that we can feel the presence of people in our life without having to physically be with them. But I met Vivian a couple years ago at a next level leadership event. Her and her husband, Raul, work together and teach together. And really, she was a huge part of my stepping into my fullness as a queen through the events and the conversations that we had. And I just saw a heart of service and a heart of devotion and a heart that was from a woman of God, unlike anything that I had seen in a long time. And it was refreshing and beautiful to see your strength in devotion next to your husband, not lost in your husband as your own woman, but standing strongly beside him. So I just want to welcome you. And I'm so happy to have this conversation.
Thank you for saying that. It just humbles me for you to even say that, that I would have an impact on somebody else's life. And for those of you that are listening right now, I just want to, acknowledge that you're even taking the time to be here and to, listening to this. And I come to you from a place of love and just so humble to even have this opportunity to speak to someone that is listening. And thank you for saying that about, my husband and myself. And that's really where God has placed us now. We, as many of you know us, or don't know us, I should say, is
Yeah.
we've been in this place of leading, and it's not always easy to lead with your husband by your side. It's not. And Raul and I have been married for over 22 years. He is my high school sweetheart. So when you've been in a marriage for a really long time, you kind of grow yourself, and you evolve. And just thank God that he's been this rock, this foundation in my life, where sometimes I didn't think it was there, or I didn't think that there was anybody there for me. God was there to pick me up. And instead of living, in pieces, he actually like picked up the pieces and helped me just put this puzzle together. And that's really where we are right now, where we find, where I find myself, Raul and myself, like we find ourselves in this place of like, God has helped me to remember, because a lot of what I teach women is like, can you remember who God created you to be?
Yes.
And not taking anything away from your husband, but edifying each other and helping each other through it. So I love what you say about lies. Like there's so many lies that we are told, even about marriage.
Yes.
So many lies that we've been told as women, like how we devote ourselves and how we lose ourselves into all these things. And the minute that we start to remember who God is in our lives, who he created us to be, then it's like game over, then we could start to be in a marriage. Then we could start to show up, right?
Yep. I love that you said that. It's like game over, because it literally is a game. I love that you said that. These lies that are infiltrating our minds and our bodies, it's a game. And I say this all the time, is that we need to understand the nature of the battle in order to have the right strategies. Because I think so many women are exhausted in their relationships. So many men are exhausted in their relationships because they're using the wrong battle strategies, the wrong game strategies, because they don't understand the nature of the game. And I really believe that there is a battle for our hearts, there is a battle for our souls, and the battleground is the mind. Right? The battleground is the mind, where we try to program these lies. We see there's massive agendas right now everywhere. And I was like, oh, I got so angry because I feel God is fueling me with a whole new fire. I believe God is raising a tribe of, warriors that are women of God, that are going to come back on fire to fight for our families, to fight for our creation, but using totally different weapons. And these weapons are those of massive love, and prayer, and pouring the Spirit into the minds of our husbands, our children, our communities, and pouring the presence of God into the atmosphere where there's so much density and thickness.
So I'm glad you really said that, because that's one of the things that always comes up with, I coach a lot of women, and I have to coach them from a place of like coming back to remembering where I was in my relationship. And nowadays, like you said, like we want to battle, we want to be out in the battle. Like we as women, like a lot of it, like if you see it, what's going on in the world, is like we want to be equal to our men, or even show them like I could do it even better, right? But that's something that God has humbled me over and over again, and continues to do that. And he reminds me, he's like, hey, Vivian, like I made you absolutely perfect. And you have so many tools in your arsenal, which is our heart, which is our body, our vessel, that men don't have.
Yes.
And for us, like this divine feminine that we carry, like I tell my women all the time, I'm like, just think about this. When you walk into a room, like we are able to create so much beauty, so much peace, so much alignment in anything that happens, whether it is that you're making dinner or whether you're making, a big corporate event, whatever it is. But we forget how important those things are to the world, to our husbands, to our family, to our kids. we forget that we have this sense of the femininity that flows, that sometimes for a lot of us, we think that it's weak, that it's less than.
Yeah.
And God sees that in such a beautiful, powerful way that when I was reminded, like, I am a co-creator with God, like he gave me this power to make these beautiful babies, to make all these beautiful things. It's like, how do I take that for granted?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the times we as women, we take those things for granted. We take them for granted. And the minute that we sit just with that idea of like, I could create, what is in my power to create? And asking God the discernment to know, like, what is it that I need to create, whether it's with my hands, which are powerful, and at the same time, so like gentle, or my heart or my mouth or whatever it is like you're creating with. It's like, what is the intention behind that? Can we sparkle a little bit of our feminine in it and know that it's just as powerful as any masculine energy or as any like man next to you? And I think that's something that we truly forget as women. And I don't know how like you see that coming through.
So much goodness, so much goodness. I totally agree. And I took notes for how we lead as women already, because you started to tap into some of that. I want to go to this later, where like we have the creation energy. We are the vessels to give birth, to be the muses, to hold the space, to nurture. We are the wisdom in many times that flows, like the wisdom. And when we read Proverbs, is referred to as she. So I want to come back to this later, but I want to really go into like, what are some of the lies? And I'm going to share some of mine that really kept me hostage. But, I know that there's a lot of women that you work with and I work with that have been really, at least for me, what I notice is I think we tend to attract women who also had, a little bit of our own past story. My story was that I believed the lie that I did not need a man, right? I was fiercely independent because I had been abandoned by my own physical father, right? It's always the father wound, right? And we can talk, that's a whole other episode. But because I had been abandoned by my physical earth father, and I had this lies that told us, see, you can't trust men. You can't trust the masculine. You don't need the masculine. Eventually he's going to leave you. And so you have to figure out how to take care of yourself, woman. And because if it's going to be, it's up to you. And so what I did is I actually built this entire world where I had like massive walls up, and I was really in competition with the masculine because I was trying to be the man. And many times, the relationship. So what happened was, this is what I noticed, is this kind of like needing to compete or saying like, I don't need you because everything I need is already here. And, there's an element to that, but it's not here because I contain it all. It's because I allow the Spirit of God to move in me and supply me with. But that's not where we're operating from, where we're in that space. If I don't need you, I don't need a man. We also say, I don't need God. So therefore, I have to be the source of all things. I have to be, have it all together. We put these walls up and we don't even realize that what it does is like, for me anyways, this whole like, I don't need the masculine. It ruined my sex life, because what it did is it turned sex into a manipulation tool, right? And it turned sex into like, oh, I know how to get what I want. I know how to play off the sensuality and sexuality that God gave me, this beautiful gift. But you don't fully embody and embrace it, because now you're like, because I don't
manipulating.
You're manipulating. Right? Manipulating the masculine with sex, and you're manipulating energy, and you're always playing with that. And it feels like you get like these tastes of power because you're like, I have control over you. But the reality is, it's so not sustaining. And after you get the taste, you just feel alone, because there's never that deep intimacy, because you don't allow it. Right? We can't experience it because it would be too weak and vulnerable to let ourselves be needed, need him, to be fully seen. So we keep these walls up. And I just want to say, if you ladies are out there, and I know for me, like this whole, like, I don't need a man thing, that was a huge lie. And I see it all the time. I see these
Yeah.
memes. I see these little like Instagram posts, and it's like, you don't need a man to be complete. You don't need
I
this. And I'm
know.
not saying we need him because we're needy out of neediness, because that energy is, I need you to make me feel better. I need you because there's something wrong with me. That's different. That's a
Mhm.
different energy, because that's still about me, 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 me. It's this neediness that way is still the same self driven, right? Ego driven energy that says it's still all about me. I need you to make me feel better. I need you to act that way in order so I feel safe, instead of like, I need you because this is the way we are created. We are human, connection is necessary. But for me, that lie really held me hostage for many years and kept me disconnected, not only from God, really disconnected from God, trying to be God, a goddess,
Mhm.
and disconnected from feeling the deep, intimate love affair that is possible with the masculine.
Mm, that's so big. What a great insight for you to get that too. Like another lie that I've got myself, and I know a lot of women that I teach go through. One of the biggest lies for us is that we're not enough.
Mm.
That, like we're just gonna sit in the back because I am not enough. I'm not, I shouldn't speak too loud, and I'm not at the same level as my husband. I'm not the same level as, anybody else. So I'm just gonna be like this doormat, and I'm just
Mm.
gonna let my husband just take over because he is the head of the household, because he's the one making more money, like all these lies that we tell ourselves. And for the women, and even for myself, like that was a big lie that I told myself, is like, my husband is the one that has to take care of it. My husband is the one that, God's given him the power, and he has more time, and he has more money, he has more resources. So therefore I'm just going to sit back and kind of resent him and help him, and be angry and try to, show love. And, like it was this battle, if you will, like of what the feelings of what I was feeling. And those are big lies that we as women, we feel like we're not enough. We're not, we shouldn't talk, we should express our feelings. We're not equal to our man in a relationship. And I know for a lot of women, like they won't even say that out loud, because it's so sad to say it out loud. But I would say the more that you connect with these lies, like you're saying, the more that we have this sense of freedom from them. And we ask God, like, okay, what is the truth? And I know you probably go into this, but one of the biggest ways that I got rid of those lies is to actually sit with myself and
Mhm.
tell myself, like, what is the truth, and not my truth. Because my truth is like, oh my gosh, it's all over the place. We get
Oh,
so disconnected from like what the real truth is. But if you are honest and you sit, and that this is the biggest thing for us as women, is like we don't take the time to actually sit and listen to what God has to say about us. Like, what are the truths? And we continue to believe lies.
yeah. I think that's such a huge point that you just said. And it's funny because it was like the opposite end of the pendulum that I was talking about, where
Yeah.
I was in the lies and the programming that I had bought into, because I witnessed my mom living out the lies that you were just saying, right? That
Mm,
she was very subservient and submissive, but not in a way that was like thriving for the kingdom, in a way that, because she was a victim of an abusive relationship for many years, right? And so I witnessed that, and I was like, there is no way in hell I'm ever going to be like her. So I
yeah.
swung the pendulum all the way over here, which was like, I'm so worthy of everything, which is still
Yeah.
masculine security, right? It's still
Yeah.
masculine security,
Yeah.
because the reason you're working so hard and striving so hard to compete is still the same core lie. It's the same core wound that says,
Yeah.
I have to prove that I'm worthy enough. So therefore, I don't need you. I won't let you pay for anything. I won't let you take care of me. I won't let you help me with this, even though secretly we're so desperate for
Yeah.
and it's so funny in all the groups and all the conversations we have, it's again, it's kind of like that dirt. It's like society has made it like a dirty thing to admit that we actually want to be taken care of. We want to be supported. We want to be held, not because we're incapable, but that's our design. Because when we can deeply relax, the feminine can deeply relax, that's how creation is birthed. Like, that's how creative ideas flow from us. That's where we can nurture best. Even in the business, right? Yesterday I went to the spa and I was just in these Scandinavian baths where you do like hot, cold therapy.
Yeah.
And I just went, and to your point, the whole God, with the Holy Spirit, I took my journal and I was like in conversation with God all day. I was deeply relaxed, and the amount of business insight and creative flow when I was writing, it was just like the floodgates open up.
Yeah,
and it was funny because my old self would have been like, what are you doing? You can't relax. You can't slow down. Like, that's ridiculous, because I had made it so rigid, right? Because I had I was so hyper masculine because I thought that I had to hustle and grind and prove, versus tuning into my own design and saying, if I can just relax, and then I can allow my creation to flow in a totally different way, right? I'm still working, I'm creating, I'm producing, but I'm producing the way that I'm created to produce. And there are times, to get out and take action and implement and execute. Today's a day of execution. But I think that what was interesting is that, really understanding how we're created to work and how we're created to function, and really owning the fact that we do want to be taken care of, and we do want the structure, and we do need each other, right? And when we can honor both sides, that's when like we can relax and things open up. So I just thought that was neat that you're like not worthy.
Totally opposite.
Prove, right? And but there's still the same core fear of, I'm not worthy. I have to prove myself, or I'm afraid to prove myself, right? So that's a huge lie. And I love that you brought that up. I think for many thousands of years, the feminine was definitely oppressed and suppressed, for that was the case. Like, we didn't have a voice. We weren't allowed to speak up. You know what I'm saying? And now we're coming into this new space where it's kind of gone the other way, where it's like feminine power. And I'm, like, I don't like it, but I'm just going to say it out there. This whole like feminine power, it's very vulgar. It's very aggressive. If you just watch what just happened on the Grammys or whatever, that, like the music videos that are coming out, I was just like appalled, because I was just like, women grinding and pushing men aside, and we don't need it. And it's like, we're forgetting our original design, and it's tearing these relationships apart. And so those are a couple of the lies. But I do want to say, I think another one of the lies, I know for me, and I want to banter back and forth, is like, I can do all the things the man can do, even better. Like, and that's different than like the I don't need, but this idea that we don't actually have roles, we don't actually have unique things that we're bringing to the table. Do you know what I'm saying? It's even more for me that I don't need each other. It's kind of like I don't have a unique role. And I think that part of this is also what's happening with the agenda that's trying to attack the genders, the masculine, the feminine. I saw that there's some schools and agendas now to eliminate the words mother and father from
or even like the bathrooms and stuff. Like, it's getting a little crazy, and it's really hard to see it.
Yeah. And so I think like, no, there's a lie. There's an attack out there that says you don't have roles. We can all just do the same thing, and it's all just vanilla. It's all neutral. Women can do every single thing, and men can wear every single thing. And I think that we're watering down, we're diluting the gifts, the divine gifts that we were given in the feminine, in the masculine, that we bring into relationship, that actually infuse the relationship with life. Right? Like, we're totally just kind of like taking those gifts and going, oh no, those roles, those gifts, that's not really a thing. Let's just throw those out the window. And I mean, that uniqueness about the feminine, that uniqueness about the masculine is what creates this wild chemistry, this attraction and this support for each other. I know that there's things that I bring to the table in my marriage with Mark that he's like, Okay. I love that when you're around and I feel your presence because it's like air, it's like oxygen.
Yes.
And I know
You
you
are
and
a
Roland
breath of
have,
fresh air.
yeah.
Yes.
So, and I know
Yes.
you guys have that going on too. Like the polarity, the chemistry between you guys is so evident just being in the presence of you guys as well. And so I want to talk about this for a minute, right? This lie that tells us like we don't want to be the same. But the lie says we can be the same and we can play the same roles. And so what do you have to say about that?
Yeah, well, here's the thing. Like Raul does a lot of events for men only, and I teach the women. And when I am so humbled that I get to go and speak to the men, every time I come out with like different insights, and I tell them, I'm like, it is more for me than what I give to them, because it's so enlightening to hear them. And every time I'm there, I come out with like a different sense of what they have to say. But most of the time, it goes along the lines of them saying, like, why would any woman want to be remotely close to what a man is or what a man could do? Like, you guys are just amazing. And what amazes me the most, what they have to say all the time is like, what men are looking forward to is to see our radiance. And
Yes.
our radiance happens from a smile. It happens from just the glow on our skin and the softness of our skin. And those are like, even those little things like we take for granted. It's like, oh yeah, my smile, it's nothing. Like you could
It's everything.
light up a whole room if you come in with like a smile. You could light up a whole room if you come in and like just like the touch and the smell of your hair, like all these things that may seem like a little like crazy to anybody that's listening out there, but those are the things that we've come away from. And it's like, we as women, like I have a boy and I have a girl, 14 and 15-year-old. And as much as I teach my daughter, I teach my son, like I teach them both the same thing. And I'm like, when we come away from those things, how like God really created us to be, there are certain things that women, like only women can do, and only men can do. And it doesn't take one thing from the other. It's just, how can we edify each other, and how can we just not be each other's enemy, but to help see each other's strengths. And I think that's one of the beautiful things that Raul does for me, and what these men do for me when I go to the events. It's like they allow me to see the littlest things that are my biggest strengths.
Yes. And they just soak it in your presence. I can
Yes.
thing when I was helping my husband with one of his events or vice versa. And I work with a lot of men and
You
they
see
just
it, right?
feel so there's just something about the feminine presence that is
Hmm.
so attractive to a man. And one of the things that I think for so many years, and I'm just gonna throw this out there because there's a lot of betrayal in relationships. There's a lot of adultery. There's a lot of addiction to porn. There's a lot of just craving intimacy and affection and to feel the experience, the essence of a woman.
Yes.
And that's why, sometimes I've talked to so many women who are like, what? I can't believe he cheated on me. Like, I'm strong, I'm successful, I have my shit together.
Yeah.
Like, I have everything. How could he possibly go? And I'm not justifying cheating at all, because that was a huge piece of my pain point growing up, is watching betrayal and affairs have been part of my family history, the generational curse for
Mm.
a long time, and we've broken it. But what I realized from talking to so many men is like they just love the most attractive thing to the masculine is a woman, like you said, that is
Yes. Yes.
smiling, happy, and relaxed. And how many women do we speak to that are tense, dissatisfied, and have the resting biatch face, that's constantly like criticizing and paper cutting the relationship because they're dissatisfied with themselves and disconnected from themselves. So,
Yes.
there is that. And so the masculine is drawn towards the grace, the tenderness, the softness, and I think I said that, but the beauty of the feminine. And that is just organic. That's part of our natural design.
Yes. Yes. And then one more thing, if I could add to that, is like when I walk into these rooms with this room's full of men, like they make me feel so safe.
Yes,
Like
I'm
I
glad you.
just feel so safe. And I think that's one of the beautiful things that, men have, is like making us feel safe.
Yeah,
That's one thing that I would say about them. And another thing is, like, when I stand before them, it's not from a place of arrogance of
right.
like, hey, look at me, like I'm this beautiful feminine goddess. Like, no, it never comes from that place. And I think they totally feel that. But I tell my woman, it's like, you're not going to be arrogant in your own way, in your own ways, but you have this arrogance of knowing that you were built by God. And I
Yeah,
think, like, for me, that was a big shift. For me, my shift was like knowing that I am who I am because God made me. And it may come off arrogant to some other people, but I'm like, the arrogance is not from something that is within me, because then my arrogance would be different, would be like, hey, like my hair is so beautiful and so shiny. And like that's what I've accomplished, right? Like these are my adornments on the outside. But the arrogance that comes, that I say to the woman, it's like, hold on to the idea that you know who made you.
yeah,
And
yeah.
then from that place, then you walk into whatever room. And that's how I am able to, because I mean, if you asked me in the past, I would never like want to be in the room with men. It's like, oh my gosh, like they're going to be looking at me and judging me. But no, it's this knowing of like, one, they're not judging me and I feel so safe with them. And two, it's like, I know who I am
Yeah.
and I know whose I am. And I walk in that room and it's like from this place of love and certainty and knowing like what I have to bring. So a lot of the women now, like especially the ones that we've been speaking to, or even if you're listening to this, is like we forget how amazing we are.
Yes.
And if you ever doubt like who you are, just allow yourself to take the time and to like look back in scripture and really like remember like how God created us and why he created us. And each and every one of us, each and every woman, we all have a different purpose in life. Like our purpose is totally different. And that's a whole different podcast or
Yeah,
video.
that's a
But
whole
like
different topic.
right? But
But
like
it's
we're also different. It's also different. But once we realize like who created us, then okay, I'm not gonna believe those lies. Like I know who I am.
yes, I love it. Oh my gosh, I think that's such a good segue into, talking about the crown of creation. But
Mm,
I have to say, like, you guys, this is so true. Everything you just said. And I think what you're talking about is the power, like the power of presence, the power of the presence of the true masculine and the power of the presence of the true feminine. It doesn't need to say anything. It doesn't need to showboat. It's not prideful. It's not like arrogant. It's literally, there's an authority that takes
yes.
over the room. And it's not like me, look at me. It's just like you're there and everybody notices because the atmosphere is different. The
Mhm.
atmosphere of the feminine is presence, the atmosphere of the masculine. And every man I work with, every man and every woman is the same thing. It's like the masculine presence, like they want to feel that grounded, centered, structured roots that holds them, and there's just something, even if you're a man and you're listening, you have been in the room of a man that holds the presence of the room simply by his presence. And he hasn't even opened his mouth yet. Or maybe he says one word, but he's not up there. It's not his show. It's not all about him. It's just like he holds the space. And it's so beautiful. And again, I think this comes back to that lie that men, just the masculine has a certain presence that provides a level of safety, these deep roots that is a different type of safety than the mother's presence that the feminine presence holds, that is safe, the safety of nurturing energy, right? The
Yeah.
safety that says I can be fully seen, I can come here in the feminine presence and be held and relax. The
Oh, I love
masculine
that.
presence, the masculine presence of safety is like, I got you. I
Yes.
got you. I'm not going anywhere and I'm going to hold you. And it's just like, oh, I just got chills because, it was just like, And it was so good because it reminds me that I literally have a verse here that says, Isaiah 41:40, do not be afraid because I am with you. Do not be anxious because I am your God. I keep on strengthening you. I'm helping you, and I am holding you
Yes.
in my hands. In there, we feel God's structure and strength. And then in Psalm 93:4, he says, mightier than the waves of the sea is my love for you.
Oh, I love that.
We can feel
I
the
love that.
feminine essence of God just through there. That says, whenever you feel unloved, unimportant, or insecure,
Oh, I love that.
remember to whom you belong.
Yes, yes, that's exactly what I was saying.
Yes.
Yes.
And you guys,
What verse is that again?
Ephesians 2:19-22. I'm going to read that again. Whenever you feel unloved, unimportant, insecure, remember to whom you belong. And so I think that was just such a beautiful, I use that today in the challenge that we're doing in the Warriors of the Heart group, but it was really about that we are never alone. And the presence of God is always around us. And there is something unique about the presence of the masculine father, the feminine, and of women and men in our own roles here on earth as kings and queens, that we add and we edify. And when we come in our organic, natural, original design, it's not 1+1 is 2. It's 1+1 with God in the middle is like
Three.
infinity. Because
Yeah.
you're just
Yeah.
like, what is all this? We breathe life into
Yeah.
each other. And I know for me, my husband, Mark, has been amazing. And I have experienced a structure and a support and a safety like never before that has unlocked and unleashed my gifts. And it has created a safety for me that allows me to step into the world boldly. And I feel comfortable and relaxed, like in my creative flow, because I'm not having to like check in all the time and protect myself and watch my back and go, am I going the right way? Like, am I going to be safe? He creates that for me in this physical realm as my husband. And obviously, God creates that spiritually, but I can relax in the knowing that I'm fully supported. And I think that that is something really beautiful that we bring as men and women to the relationship is let me remember more of the man God created me to be. Let me remember more of the woman God created me to be instead of letting me forget, water it down so that I can people please and not offend anybody and meet these hellish agendas. I'm just going to say that's what they are. They're agendas from hell that are infiltrating our world. And you said they're making us the enemy. You said that. And how many couples right now are in relationship and they're literally, the battleground is their home. And they're just like, let me get through one more day without getting slayed.
Yeah.
Or, another outburst, and we're enemies. We're sleeping with the enemy.
Yeah. And then they use their kids as their weapons,
Right?
like that's their weapon. So and if it's lies from everywhere, whether it's social media or whether it's, society or just all beliefs, I think there's so much of that. And, one of the things that I've actually stopped doing for like the past 10 years is watching TV. Like it's very rare that I sit down and watch TV. And, now with the phones is more accessible, but I think also, like, as a side note, which something that I do, there's so many different apps and stuff and technology that you could use, but I have one app that's called Yap, YAPP,
Right.
and I intentionally, like, I downloaded that app, and it comes on like little reminders throughout the day, and it's like I love it because it's a gentle reminder, like the way it even comes on my screen. It's not like bam, but it's just like, yeah, I'm coming here, and I just write down scripture, like, and that's why I asked you scripture, because it's so good when we are reminded about these things. And one of the biggest things, like, how do we come back to not knowing the lies, is to battle it with the truth. And if you don't know the truth, if God's word, it's not in your heart and it rolls right out of your tongue, it's so easy for us to get caught up in a lie. So for me, like when I was sick, a couple of months back, like every time I had this crazy thoughts, negative thoughts, lies, I had the word of God like at the tip of my tongue, and I would say it. say it over and over again. So the reason why I got this app is because, you know, my younger kids, it's so good for us to use technology and battle these things and use it for our own good. So I love the app. I'm, you know, it's not like I'm sponsored or anything. It's just,
What's
I
it
think
called?
it's free. Yap.
Okay.
WAPP. And it's just, you put as many verses as you want, and it reminds you throughout the whole day. And also reminds you to breathe, which there's a lot of apps with that, but it has both in one. So I love it. But it's just like one of the biggest things for me that I always teach myself and my kids is like, okay, we're not going to believe these lies. Then how are we going to battle that?
Yeah, I love that you said that. I love that you said that. And I'm going to put the resource to that underneath in the comments. So you guys, you know, make sure you comment as you're listening to this, because number one, it helps to share this with other people, the more interaction. So we're curious right now, what lies are coming up for you? You guys put this down in the comments. Like, does this resonate with you? You know, where have you seen this in your own life? And you said something so key, is that we have to be intentional about where we redirect our thoughts. Like, you know, God tells us, guard your minds and your hearts, because those are portals. Those are portals. And so many people are meditating. And I know meditation's really big. And I know it's, you and I meditate, we're big meditators. But the question that I ask myself, my clients, is what are we meditating on? We can be meditating and speaking these affirmations. And there's a lot of affirmations that I don't think people realize when they're coming out of your mouth. What you're actually speaking out is like you're speaking lies. You're not speaking truth. You're saying, I am a goddess or a god, or I am the creator of all things. And we don't even realize what we're saying. And it's actually, you know, they come dressed in light. They look good, they feel good. They're, you know, even like, but they're not, they're actually polarizing us even more against our original design. So we have to be careful of what we speak out of our mouth, because I am created, I'm co-creating with God, you know? And yes, this, even that thing you said, the goddess, like we've used that terminology before, but there's so much teaching in the world right now that you are a goddess and you should be worshipped. And it's all about me, instead of, no, I'm a goddess, the daughter of God, the daughter of the King. And it's like that energy just radiates from you, not because you're out there claiming it everywhere. And again, it's not me, goddess energy, but it's like the God just flows through you. It's God flowing through you. So that is like the S is just the feminine part, the essence, right? That flows. So they're so subtle, but they're big differences, right? And so I want to go and jump into our organic original design. I know for me, I struggled through years and years and years of really dysfunctional relationships. I went through a 10-year marriage that was riddled with lies, riddled with betrayal, riddled with, you know, mistrust, couldn't trust. And then because I never healed the wounds, you know, my father's wounds, the physical father on earth, and came back to my, you know, spiritual father, never learned to rely on him. And then I just took that into my next 10-year relationship, and the cycle repeats itself, right? The bondage, the generational curse that has been, just keeps repeating itself until we finally decide to break it. And when I decided to break it, when I recognized, I'm like, this bondage is not just my own. It was my father's, it was my grandmother's, it was that one before that. And it just kept getting replayed. And it was like the same cycle continued. Once we recognize it's a cycle, we have the power to break it. We have the power to break it. And for me, when I realized this lies of betrayal, of abandonment in my family ends with me, and I literally dropped to my knees and I said, God, you know, Jesus, reveal to me what it means like to be a woman, what it means to be the beloved, a queen, a daughter that is loved so much, because I had the wounds from my father that I never really experienced that depth of love. Show me, reveal to me what it means to be a bride that is so cherished, so adored and loved. Show me and reveal to me what it means to be the crown of creation that you originally designed in the garden. And it was through that relationship that Jesus really revealed himself to me as a king and took care of me and helped me and taught me about myself as a woman. And and it was all about restoring the original design, how he created me to be, the woman he created me to be, and restoring my relationship with the masculine and redefining what this relationship dynamic on earth gets to look like between male and female. So I want to talk about specifically like what it means to be a queen, because you use that terminology, I use that. And what was funny is when I started to research, when I was launching Warriors of the Heart and the Queen of Hearts, and I typed in the word queen, and you do a search, it is so nasty. It's so dark. It's all like the evil queen. It's like the power hungry queen. Like there's a lot of dark images, right? It's like the ice queen, the frigid queen, the nasty queen, the evil queen. It's a lot of really dark programming that is like the power hungry, manipulative, malicious queen that is going to control you and like oppress you, instead of truly the queen that is going to hold you and uplift. So talk to me about, what is it? Because you're, your thing is born to be a queen. So what does it mean when we throw this word like, okay, sisters, let's rise as queens? I think that we like the sound of that, but a lot of women don't truly understand what that means.
And that's the reason why I named it like Born to be a Queen, because, I feel like God already placed that in our hearts, right? And along the lines that we just totally forget. So it's just going back to remembering. And for everybody is different. And I think, we have very few examples of queens, but just like if you're thinking of like, I often think back of like a Queen Esther. How loving and how gracious she was. And almost like the way that I saw her is like she was never demanding of power and of love, but almost like she was very graceful. And I think that's one of the words that I really love to hold on to when I think of a queen, especially for myself, is this word of grace, and not to demand, but just for me especially is like to feel so abundant and so full in God's love and who he is, that you're not sacrificing anything or anyone around you. But he shows you and he helps you. And not to say that, I think like a lot of the times when we think like, oh, okay, you're a queen, so you have this beautiful castle and you have everything made for you and you have your servants, and you like, no, that's not it. Like we forget the roles, right? It's like there is so much responsibility. There is so much servanthood that comes behind being a queen. It's like, we're there to serve, we're there to love, we're there to give, we're there to put order and control, not from a place of demand, but from a place of like, okay, organization and all these things happen. But the root of it just comes back to what I tell the women is like, you must take the time to really remember who God created you to be. And it's funny because like I end every video and I tell them that, like every video, it doesn't get old. To me, it doesn't get old because that's my constant reminder, like what I say in the videos, what I teach, it comes back always to me. And I always end it like that. Like you were born to be a queen. It just takes us that remembrance. And we don't do that enough. Like we don't remember who God created us to be. And I've heard you say cultivating, like you're cultivating a lot of it. For me, it's the same thing. Like we get to cultivate who the queen is in our kingdom. And I actually call it the 3 C's, which is consciously cultivating connection to the queen.
Yes, it's so true.
And if it's not a conscious thing of like, well, who is this queen? And a lot of the times, like I ask them, I'm like, when you're going through whatever scenario, how will your queen show up?
Yeah.
And is it a queen that everybody's going to love? Probably not. But it's going to be a queen that is just, a queen that it's loving, just like Jesus was. Like, when he went into so many different places, when he traveled through all these roads, it's like he wasn't demanding. He walked into every town and he taught and he gave and he, was like lesson after lesson. And that's who we are. So like, if you can be that queen, if you can be that in your kingdom, in your castle, then you really, like, it's hard for us to go somewhere else and be that.
Yeah.
So that's where we got to start. Like, we got to start in our own castle, which is our body. We got to take care of this. Like, who do you show up? How do you show up as a queen for yourself? Then how do you show up as a queen to your king, whether you're married or not? Like, you probably will attract the right king. And how do you show up with your kids? Like, for me, that's like, they see how I operate, and it's not just on video, and it's just not what I'm teaching the women. It's how I operate every single day, because that's like our daily thing is to consciously cultivate connection to the queen, that God will look down and say, like, I'm happy you're listening. I'm happy you're actually getting the downloads that I'm telling you, because it's not how we see like a Queen Elizabeth or whatever queen that we have right now, but it's like, who does, like you say, like, who does he want us to be?
Yeah. So
That's
cool.
that's one of the biggest things for me. It's like a constant reminder.
I love that. I love that you said that. And I know even in when part of my affirmations and declarations, really, it's not, I'm affirming and I'm declaring, and I'm, when I'm teaching and I'm working with my clients, is one of the things I always say is, every day I'm remembering more and more of the woman you have created me to me. Every day I'm remembering more and more of the grace, more and more of the radiance, more and more, because, it is about remembering. And the world, has made us forget. And I believe that is an enemy tactic, is let me, let you forget where you came from, right? Let you forget. That's like the devil's tactic, right? That's Lucifer's tactic, is to say, you know what, come with me over here. You can be gods, you can be goddesses, you can do everything God can do, you can be God, and you don't need that. Let's forget where you came from. I'll give you all of these riches and all this stuff. And it's a total lie. And what I love is that when you said about the body, the feminine body, let us not forget that in the beginning, God created Adam to be in communion with him. But then he realized it is not good for man to be alone. And so he made woman. Whoa, man, like, here we are. He brings us, and he cultivates us. He creates us inside the garden. He doesn't create us out in the wilderness. He creates us inside the garden, with our husband, from our husband, so that we can be his Ezer, his helper, his co-creator, so that we can walk together and we become the one that brings life. All of a sudden, Adam's world is brighter. We bring more life and companionship to his world, because now his kingdom that he was given domain over has even more meaning. He gets to experience it and share it with this woman. And isn't that beautiful? Because I know how many men we've both seen that are striving and working their butts off to build a kingdom, when all they want is like, who is the woman? Where is my queen?
They're always looking.
Right? That is going to bring life, color, air, oxygen to my kingdom. That is going to make the birds come alive. And it makes it all worth it, and it's so beautiful. And we're designed to cultivate it together and, experience it together. But I want to come back real quick to the body, because one of the things when we think of what does it mean to be a queen, and I think, again, this goes like, so much of the world programming has had us obsessed with our bodies. Am I skinny? Am I fat? Am I beautiful enough? And we're chasing and striving to become beautiful, instead of honoring the beauty that we already are, and the body that we've already been given as this like miraculous vessel for creation. And it's like, I think it's so cool that God created us to be the ones that would be the vessels for creation to flow. Like, we are the ones that give birth. Yes, we need the man, but the baby forms inside our wombs, and we are the protectors of life inside our bodies, and we are the nurturers. So when we get what a miracle our physical body is, and what a container for creation this physical body is, that we are created to nurture and hold, and really just, we're already beautiful and radiant, and we just let it shine and we hold that space. It's like, beauty is a just a natural phenomenon that happens.
I know.
It's like you become more beautiful because you're more full of the beauty. You're more full of the radiance. It's not something you go get. You're just
I
full
know.
of it.
I know. And the sad part is like how many women, live on this place, like not knowing how beautiful you really truly are because we're trying to be everyone else. And again, it just goes back to the lies and the social media and all these things that, we're being fed. I remember like maybe 3 years ago when I was sit and sorry, that's my dog if you hear barking. I would sit and just pray because that's like my ritual, like just to pray. And I remember it was so clear how like God just said, like, Vivian, have you even taken the time to say thank you to your body because it carried a baby? Because I remember like looking in the mirror, like, and just seeing like the scars in my stomach and like the stretch marks and thinking like, oh my gosh, like I want to make them go away. Like, and just that like pouring over him, telling me like, you are absolutely perfect because you carried a baby. Like you said, like we're this, co-creators. Did you take the time to say thank you?
Yeah.
Did you actually slow down and say thank you? My son is 14 years old. At that time, he was 12 years old. And I actually cried and I wept so much. It was like, I think I had to sleep for like 2 days because it was just like this massive, like just moment of gratefulness to saying thank you to my body for just, being this vessel of carrying this baby, of co-creating. It was so beautiful. But I know, like I speak to a lot of moms, it's like, when do we take the time to say thank you?
Yeah.
When have we taken the time?
Yeah. I think so many women are entrapped and enslaved in this heightened nervous system response because we're still operating from a place of needing to compete with the masculine or trying to do everything. We're like in this martyr role. That's like we put ourselves last because we don't value who we are, in God. Yeah. And so, you see the two opposite ends of the spectrum. But again, the physical symptom, the physical manifestation is the same, which is a burnt out, stressed out nervous system, a body that's sick and tired and exhausted and no sex drive. And we're going, why? It's like all of my creative juice has dried up. I'm not interested in sex. I feel ugly. And by the way, that is like, we can't be in our radiance, in our beauty when we're stressed out, exhausted, trying to be everything for everyone. We must remember that's not our original design. We were created in a garden, inside of a garden, we were created to bring life, and our body needs to be relaxed. And that means we get to trust, the masculine counterpart, this God, that our creator, that he didn't make a mistake. He didn't make a mistake the way he created us. And I just think that is so, and it really, and that I owned a holistic health facility for 10 years and I worked with so many women throughout the years, struggling to lose weight, struggling with their physical identity, their body identity, and like, it broke my heart. And I went through it for years where I was pushing my body to be 15% body fat or whatever. And I physically looked great, but I wasn't oozing beauty. I wasn't, and I was insecure about it. And here's the thing, the masculine, the true masculine, okay, knows and senses beauty. It's not about our size. It's not about there's see, men hate it when their women are like constantly obsessing about, am I too fat? Am I this? When we're insecure about our bodies and we're constantly either talking about it, questioning them about it, or trying to hide our beauty, like that is so unattractive to a true king, because he's like, what are you talking about? All he sees is your beauty. All he sees is your curves. And whether that's our husband, I know Raul loves every ounce of you, and my husband too. And he's always like, all they see is the radiance and the beauty. They're not looking at our faults, like that. Right. And God even more so, like he's constantly looking at us. So as we kind of shift, we could talk about this topic forever, but I know yesterday, one of the things that I said is, when I look in the mirror, can I look through God's eyes and see myself the way he sees me? Like, is he going, oh, look, I must have made a mistake? Or is he going, my daughter, you are so beautiful, so radiant, so gorgeous. Let's chip away all this excess stuff that you've picked up because you've forgotten your original design. And for me, that's been so comforting to just come back and go, I'm already a masterpiece. I just put on too much excess from the world. I'm going to chip that away and just every day remember more beauty. And it's so cool because now I'm actually much higher body fat percentage, but
and you just feel so much more radiant.
I feel so much sexier, so much more radiant, so much more connected, and I own my body and its beauty in a totally different way. And I'm not sitting there parading around needing to look sexy or use my sexuality now as a tool or a weapon. It's just not even part of the reality. So I just, I think that we can go on and on and on with this subject, but I want to transition for the sake of time, and we can come back to this. But how do we lead as women? I encourage all of you women out there, Vivian has programs, I have programs. If you guys want to learn more, I'm going to put some links below. We're going to be talking about this more. I'm going to invite Vivian back so we can just talk about that, the feminine essence. I think that we can do a whole topic on that. But I want to say for this episode, let's talk about leading as a queen, leading as a woman, standing next to the masculine so that we can lead together, because we are leaders. This isn't like, oh, he's the king and you're down here. Like, no, we are co-creating. We are leading together. We do have different roles. But I know for me, for years, I was like, no way in hell I'm going to serve anybody. He's going to serve me. And no way I'm going to be obedient to anyone. He's going to be obedient to me. And it was a competition. But there's something beautiful about serving each other, being in obedience to the spirit, and really like leading together. So I know that's a big thing, but I think you do this so well. So talk about what do you really feel like our role as leaders, as women is? Leading our families, our husbands, our kingdoms, whatever. Take that wherever you want it. But where do you see the feminine role of leadership right now?
Well, that's a whole loaded question. That's probably like there's so many episodes that we could come back to this. Yeah. But here's the thing, like for me and my household, the way that we run things is like totally different from where we were in the past. And I think, again, like we fall into this thing of like, I'm not going to surrender to what you're telling me. I'm not going to be submissive to like your rules. And that in itself, like already brings this sense of friction and like this power control, right? So there's always like this fight around it. When I decided, and I think whether it was me, I decided, it was like my choice. Like, I'm no longer going to fight this idea that I need to have control, that I'm less than, that I won't surrender, that I won't love him the way that I want to love him. When I let go of all those stories, then I had this clear vision of like, well, God is a God of order.
Yes.
And there needs to be order wherever we are. So the truth is that I let my husband lead. Like, he is the leader of this household. And I am right next to him. Like, I am not behind him. I am not in front of him. I am next to him. And the amazing thing that happened when I let go of that, it was like this sense of like, okay, we could lead together there. And I understand that there were certain things that him, as being the head of the household, as you will, that he might need to make like certain decisions. But I know that the decisions that he's taking is for the best of me and my children, my household. Like, I know the best intention is always there, and I don't question it. Like, that is something that I don't question when he comes, and God forsaken, like he's gonna go and like make the wrong decision. No, like, I let him as this masculine energy, as the king of our household, because I know that his heart may not be always in the right place, but I know the intention is always in the right place. And thank God, like I said, like my husband and I have been married 22 years, and it wasn't always like this, because there's been plenty of times that he made wrong decisions. And God knows that I was always there to like punch him a little deeper and make him feel worse than he already felt, because women are good at doing that. But the difference and the reason why our marriage has changed is because I allow him to just lead. And if he makes mistakes, like we all make mistakes, like if we say that we don't mistakes, like we're liars. And we all make mistakes, and I'm there to just to comfort him and to love him and to continue to edify him, because at the end of the day, like we are a team, like we're here together. So that's one thing. And I also know like what part I play in this household. Like I am very clear right now, like who Vivian is. And it's taken me a while to really remember that. But God makes it very clear to me that I am so important in this equation, that there would not be all of this fruition coming if it wasn't that we were together in this. Because I think like God rejoices and he delights in seeing like households just come together. And as hard as it is, like I'm not painting a fairy tale picture here, because it's not, but it's almost like effortless when we stop fighting against each other and we say like, okay, God, like we hear you, we get it. We're going to let you run our household. There is a head and there is a tail. And we know our roles, and we love each other so deeply and honor each other and respect each other, that our household is going to like flourish.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the times society, the world, it's really hard for them to understand that, you know, like someone has to lead, someone has to be out there, but you're not less than. Like that doesn't mean that you're any less than your husband, right? Does that make sense? And it's something that really has changed our household for the best, because there is no fighting against each other. Again, like we're working towards this clear vision. And that's when like we come back to the table all the time, and it's like, okay, how are we going to do this? Let's mastermind, and how are we going to do this together? And
Yeah.
what are things that you probably don't agree with or don't like how do we compromise, how do we come about it? But we have this clear vision, but at least for the moments, like this is the vision that we have, how do we work towards it? And I think that's a big thing for us, is like getting together between the two of us, allowing God to lead and having a clear vision as to where we're going. And there may be times that we don't agree, but how do we compromise to get to that vision? Because ultimately the vision for both of us is the same. Like we're all going to end up, you know, this, we want to get to the same end result, the same destination.
Yeah.
It may not always be the same. We may not always like get to the same destination through the same paths, but we want to get there.
Yeah. It's so true. And I think it's remembering we're on the same team. We are on the same team. We're fighting for the same team. And we forget and we start fighting around each other. And what is so beautiful, I think, that as we step into this kind of leadership, and we actually, it's so ironic, right? As we surrender the need to be the leader, as we surrender the need to be the one who wins this battle, who wins overall, who has more control, who has more power, the power struggle falls away, and the power actually increases. The level of influence actually increases, because now we have true influence over each other instead of forced influence, which is power by force, right? And how many people
demanding
have relationships, where we're just like demanding power by force, and we're in this power struggle, and it's exhausting to be in a power struggle. So I think what is the ironic, paradoxical thing, and that's the beauty of how the spirit works, is the minute I lay it down and I'm willing to not, you know, the minute I'm willing to say, okay, God, I don't need to be the one in control, all of a sudden he says, okay. And all of a sudden we have influence in ways that we never thought, because it's just God working through us in different ways. And so it's so cool that you said that. And I love that visual of remembering we're on the same team. Do we have a joint vision? At the core, we have the foundation that we built. And, you know, the foundation is like, we are, you know, God is at the bottom, you know, at the core. We're here to to really, there's a desire to show up and lead together. There's a desire to actually serve each other. Like I wake up and I'm excited as a queen in my relationship. It's like, oh, I'm excited to wake up. And it's like, how can I love my king? How can I love my husband? How can I pour some love on this man today? And it really shifts the dynamic, because as I do that as the queen, as I lead in the relationship with love, with the heart of service, as I lead as the queen to say, I'm going to show up and, bring wisdom or whatever to the relationship, it is multiplied. It is multiplied and it is amplified. And he rises higher as the king. And so we're kind of doing this where we keep, it's not competition, but we keep rising each other up, because the leadership role is, my job is to show up and lead in love, to create the space for him to come back. And I believe a huge role of us as women, as queens, is to be the spiritual leaders of our family in many ways. Not to say that the husband is not, but I know that I'm a spiritual prayer warrior for my family, for my kids. And there's so many times where I have said to Mark, I'm sensing something is going on spiritually with one of the kids. There's something in their room. There's something going on. We need to pray about this. And he submits to that, right? He says, okay, and he receives it, and then he executes, right? And so we're in this together, where he might be the physical protector, he's got the structure to be the physical protector in this world. But I believe as women, we're like supernatural protectors of our families, of our kingdoms, of our king. And to that point, I think there's an element of us as queens that invite the king, invite our husband, invite the masculine to come into our chamber, let's call it. It's beautiful, it's sensual, it's inviting, it's passionate, but we also invite him in to listen, to hear wisdom, to hear words of wisdom, not because we're forcing our opinions on him, but because he knows in the chamber there's wisdom, there's guidance. And he comes in and he can relax and receive the words that we speak, because they're not, they're spoken from a place of love. And there are times also where we can challenge him in the chamber, not from an energy of battling, but to say, you know what, I see you, king, and I want to challenge you to rise higher with me, because I see the man that you're created to be, and let's go. And when he can see that we see him that way, he wants to rise to the occasion. So there's an invitation and a challenge that's not a combative challenge, but it's a challenge because we see them again, God's eyes,
Yeah. I'm glad you say that, because we often have this conversation with Raul, and he always says to me, like, for us women, like, we have this connection with God that is so, like, what does he say? He has like we have a connect, like Wi-Fi connection, and they kind of have like a dial up, it's like trying to get there. So we kind of like help them through it, because we have such insights. And I know, like, for, like, if you are in a relationship or you're in your household, like, that's so beautiful that we as women could have that discernment and to be able to help our man do that. Like, that's so powerful. Like, just that in itself is like, how do we help them, right? Like, it reminds me, one of the events that Raul had, he leads men again, like I said, and he, at this point, I think it was like maybe 80 to 100 men, and he was get ready to get up there. And I said, Raul, when you get up there, why don't you pray over them? Because they need prayer right now. And he was like, no, Vivian, I can't do that. What are they going to think of this? They're not going to come back. They're going to think this is some religious theme thing. And it's not, really, it's not. It's like business geared, relationship geared, but it's all like God driven. So he didn't for whatever reason. And I honor that part of him. But when it was my turn to get up there, I actually, like, I started with like, God is my everything. He is my foundation. Let's just start with a quick prayer. And that was like the best thing that I could have done, because it wasn't for me. It was like for God's honor and glory. And I cannot tell you enough how many men came up to me and said, like, Vivian, that was the most beautiful thing I've ever heard. Thank you for praying over us. I really needed that. I really, really needed to know that God was like the driving force in this event. There were so many like breakthroughs, and I kept thinking to myself, like, thank you, God, for giving me the strength to speak from a place of courage. And we as women have that connection again to like, how do we lead? How, from what place do we lead? And it takes courage to sometimes speak what our husbands may not be willing to speak.
Yeah.
And that's beautiful, because we again have this creative power with God that we could do that.
Yeah. Yeah. And that is, I love it. And I think that's a great place to end, is that we can love fiercely. We can be courageous. We are bold. We are courageous. We are fierce. We are creative vessels. We hold so much beauty and radiance and power as the queens. And it doesn't have, it is like not the way the world is teaching women to be. And it is not the lies that are attacking society right now. There is a whole other realm, a supernatural realm of beauty and radiance and power and depth and richness that is available to us when we like recognize that the veil of deception that everyone has been under, and we go, I'm going to lift the veil, and I am just going to go and play in a new realm, the realm that I was created for. And I just think that, wow, there's just so much that we can, like, I just want to keep talking all day about this, because I think it's so good. And I know we'll have a follow-up to this. But ladies, gentlemen, all of you out there listening, I mean, this is real. What we are talking about is not make-believe. Like, I have witnessed Vivian, I've witnessed Raul, I've witnessed what she's speaking of. I know that you've witnessed Mark and I in the same way. And what we are talking about feels very foreign to some people and some couples, and it feels so far away. But I want to encourage you that it's very, very, very real. It's very real, and it's very accessible. It just requires that we humble ourselves enough to be willing to put down the ways of the world, the sword of the battle, and we decide that we're going to really open ourselves up to receive more of God's Spirit at work in our life, to help us remember who we're created to be and how to show up in these amazing relationships. And I promise you that just like that, your relationship can be transformed. Because it always was one way doesn't mean it always has to be. And it doesn't mean you have to leave this one and get a better one. that may be the solution sometimes. But I believe that God wants to work and move in people's lives right now. And we are instruments of a much bigger game, and a much bigger world that's unfolding. So I'm so grateful for you. Thank you for joining me today. It was such a great conversation. I just feel so blessed to be able to speak about this out loud. And again, you who are here, who are new, subscribe. We're going to drop some links below for ways that you can connect with myself, with Vivian. Make sure you guys join the Warriors of the Heart Facebook community. That's where we have so much goodness going on. We have a 21-day challenge right now.
Excited for that.
Yeah, it's so good. So thank you again for joining us. Here's to loving fiercely and leading courageously. God bless.